Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Summit, FinTech Trends and Applications. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Throughout today's event, you will also have the opportunity to win one of several prizes. So be sure to check out the Prizes and Raffle Rules tab of the interface to see how you can earn points. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console next to Chat. Afterwards, if you're eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions on credits, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ashley Wilson, Vice President of Accounting, Inhabit. We're super excited to have Ashley and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Reinforcing Leadership and Invigorating Your Finance Team. Welcome, Ashley. Over to you.
Hi, Nick. Hi, guys. We're glad to have you here today. We have some discussion questions that we'll kind of go over as a whole panel and a whole team. I'll chime in where something's relevant. We'll kind of flow. I think that we are going to kind of keep it more discussion level. So if you have questions kind of related to the topic that we're talking about, please, put them in the chat, and Nick and team will make sure that we can kind of see them, and we'll try to address those more in real time. We will leave a little bit of time, about 15 or 20 minutes, hopefully at the end, to address questions you've had. So if you want to write them down and keep them as we go, we'll kind of go through them. We'll go through brief introductions first. So kind of like Nick said, my name is Ashley. I am VP of Accounting at Inhabit. We are a software company. I've been here for about 2 years. Again, accounting, I consider accounting and finance very similar. I work very close with our finance team. So I'm happy to kind of be here and throw in kind of a different viewpoint from the accounting side. So hopefully that's beneficial for those of you all that are on here, to get CPE, and hopefully everybody gets a little bit out of it. So Brian, if you kind of want to start first with introductions, we'll work our way around to maybe Gabriel and then Marco, and then we'll get into the questions.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley and Nick. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Brian McKernan. I work at the United States Naval Academy. I'm a supervisory financial analyst, and I've been kind of operating in the finance world for probably about 10 out of my 35 years of being outside of college, if you will. My first 20 years, I was spent in the Marine Corps. I was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot. Midway through my career, I stopped flying for a bit and went and got an MBA in financial management, and did some payback tours at the Pentagon, working with the House and Senate appropriations committees, and also doing financial management. Upon retirement, I went and worked for a startup company. I was the CFO. It was a global company based out of the UK, so managing 2 teams here in the US and in the UK, doing finance, business development, marketing, the whole 9 yards. And then this opportunity came available in the United States Naval Academy about 3 years ago. So I kind of live and breathe finance every day now. I manage a small team. And I also dip my foot in teaching here at the Naval Academy as well. Happy to be here.
Gabriel?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Brian. Super excited to be here with you all. I am Gabriel Teixeira, originally from Brazil, working for Diageo North America as a finance director for the last 2 years. I've been with the company for around 8 years, 2 different markets. In general, my experience has been in big CPGs, enterprise. I've been last 15 years working on multiple finance functions. More recently, oversighting our ready-to-drink business unit, all the financial aspects of it. But before that, I've been to commercial finance, supply finance, accounting and treasury, and also a lot of FP&A. That's kind of my second job. My full-time job is actually a father of two. Very proud to be father of João and Pedro, my two little brats, and super excited to be with you all here today. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you, Gabriel and Brian. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. My name is Marco Rossi. I work for Siemens Healthcare Diagnostics, so it's a med tech pharmaceutical company. Yeah. I serve there as the head of finance for the global supply chain management, regarding everything in terms of what we call our core lab systems. So if you think about customers that we serve would be Quest Diagnostics, so the main labs, right, that we equip with both analyzers and then the reagents that we run there. I'm responsible for the global SCM manufacturing, so that's about €1 billion in value of production. And we have global manufacturing sites. There's about 10 of them that I'm responsible for, with their own finance teams in each site, right? So overall, we have about 1,500 people working and operating those sites that would fall under my responsibility, and finance teams that support the operations at each site. And depending on how big the site is, it varies. It could be an individual contributor. It could be a finance director that has responsibility for a team of people. I too am proud father of 3 kids. They're a little bit older. So the oldest one is starting to drive, so that's its own challenges. But it's I love the field of finance. I've started off with a master's in industrial engineering, and then as Brian also earned my executive MBA at St. Joe's here in Philadelphia. And it's been really a rewarding career. So at Siemens Healthineers, where I've been now 20 years now since. Yeah, that's me. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, guys, for the introductions. Hopefully you all can see we have a diverse panel. So again, questions as you go, I am sure we'll have very diverse answers. Let's start from your experience. Maybe we'll direct this one to Gabriel first. From your experience, what do you believe a successful finance leadership looks like, and how do you define a strong finance team?
All right, thank you. I think finance leadership is critical not only for the finance function, but for the overall organization. And I've managed teams both in person, remote, from multiple countries. And I think that when I reflect on this question, the first thing and most important for a finance leader is uncompromised stewardship. I think one cannot doubt that we as finance leaders will always have good intent to use our judgment to make the right choices and to set the right strategies. That's what our teams and the other functions will look up to us for. And I'm sure that once you have that in place, you build the trust and you'll be able to deliver great projects. Another element that's critical, I think, it's empowering our teams. I've seen multiple leadership styles, and I think the more we delegate, we set the guardrails, we give the team the right tools to achieve our goals and to make sure we are great business partners and business leaders. Things will move on faster. We'll be able to make a huge and better difference to the business. I'm very strong about delegation in general. And if I think about one example where I'm very proud of my finance leadership was when I was head of supply finance at the time for the market and managing complex operation with multiple distribution and production sites. And I went out for paternity leave for 6 months. And at the time I had a lot on my plate, but that was actually just post-COVID, so which made things a little bit spicier. I would I reflect and thought about not going on paternity leave, but I spoke with my team, and I had a very strong team at the time, and I felt confident after a few interactions that I should go. And I didn't receive one call, so the CFO was directly handling everything with my team. Very strong feedback received, and that for sure made me feel very proud about the leadership and the culture we had in place.
Yeah. So I hear versatility definitely in that, which I think we all kind of have to have. Marco, Brian, anything to add to that?
Brian, do you want to go first?
I could just echo Gabrielle's comments, and he made a lot of good ones. Thank you for that. Having a little bit of leadership experience myself, leading, lots of people, whether it's in combat or in finance. I think buy-in's a big one. Setting those goals and setting your guidance, or whatever your strategic objectives are, making sure your team really understands what their role is, how they provide value, and that they do provide value, and that they're recognized for that. Most importantly, I think keeping a tight team is, you as the supervisor or the leader is not being afraid to pull your sleeves up and get down and work with them and show them that you can do this. And you don't get there by just telling them, do it. You need to have the experience. You need to show them that you can do that. You need to lead, essentially, and prove to them that, hey, I know how to do this. This is what we're going to do. Do you have any questions? And then, like Gabriel said, let them go. Give them all the flexibility they need, support them with the resources, and watch what they can do. You hired them, you built your team, you trust in them, and that'll go a long way.
Yeah,
Marco?
There's a lot of good stuff there that Brian said. I would only add that the main focus, I would say, the basic, the foundation is the when I look at the question, right? So finance leadership, and what does define success? What's the mission? How do we know we're winning, right? The first and foremost is that we as finance professionals have to guarantee the accuracy of books and records, right? So there's no compromise. So with that comes that, myself and Brian and Gabriel will have to have a high level of integrity, because mistakes happen. And then the question is, how do you deal with that, right? So being transparent, allowing mistakes to be surfaced so we can learn from them is number one, right? But the number one responsibility that we have as finance professionals is accuracy in books and records. There's no doubt about it, right? And so what I have started doing is I share with my team one mistake that I made and what I learned from it on every session, because I don't want them to think that, if I want them to fail, I want them to, and everybody will, right? There's no doubt about it. It's just the degree of which intensity that failure is. But okay, so fail fast, right? And pick yourself up fast, and then share that learning. Don't put it under the table. Share it with everybody. So you only make that mistake once in an organization, and you extract the maximum learning for the tuition that you have paid, right? But there can be no compromise. So I see a lot of, a background that Brian, for example, has, where integrity is number one, right? And your previous career, right? So that is for me an immediate fit, that you would be a great financial leader, because you would, stand up and say, raise my hand and say, look, this is not, we have an issue here. We need to talk about this, right? How do we fix this? Who needs to be informed? And just the general idea of that failing is part of going the right pace, right? If you're not making any mistakes, you're probably moving glacial, because you're double, triple checking everything, and then you're just being wiped out by the competition that is moving probably faster than you, if you're not making a single mistake ever, right?
Thanks, guys, for those examples. I think we all have plenty of them, and I'm sure we can all take something from each of those. This is one that I think that I catch myself doing kind of every day now, especially around uncertainty. So Brian, we'll kind of direct this one to you. I feel like with your background, especially in military, this is probably rings true across multiple levels of your career. But what best practices are used to remain agile, flexible, and resilient during times of uncertainty?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I'm adding to this based off of what Marco said because it's germane to the last point. I think starting out is with the level of accuracy and details, and I'm going to kind of mirror aviation along with finance because they go down the same road, and details matter. Aviation details are the difference between life and death, whether you follow it or whether you don't. Very bad things can happen. In finance, very bad things can happen, and we're very detail oriented. So we go by the book, and we follow the rules and we follow the procedures. But I think to start out is you've got to have a strong infrastructure of understanding of your field. Be an expert, be a SME, subject matter expert. Make sure you have the education. Make sure you're constantly updating and studying and checking your processes. And that really leads to the biggest part is have a plan. Okay, we always say in the military, we plan to fail, and your plan's only as good as first contact, which means that in our world, a fog of war, what does that mean? It means that you can plan all day, but at the end of the day, when you come up in front of a situation, it's probably going to go out the window and you're going to have to come up with or execute plan B, plan C, or plan D. You've got to have multiple courses of action and be flexible. Well, how do you do that? Well, you've got strong procedures in place to be able to handle those changes that are presented to you. In my previous world, that's anywhere between 150 to 400 miles per hour. You've got to react within seconds. In the finance world, we have a little bit more time, but I feel like it's just as stressful because those numbers, when you're talking billions or millions of dollars, it's a big deal. Not to mention following rules and regulations, it can be the difference between breaking the law or following the law. So you have to be really, really careful. So for me, it really boils back down to planning, constantly planning, over planning, and then when you're presented with a situation, you execute the course of action that fits that scenario, not necessarily the plan that you wanted to execute. I also think that just today, literally before this brief, I had a massive, massive thing dumped in my plate that I had to get done by tomorrow, close a business. But fortunately, because the plans that we have in place, myself and another individual were really able to respond. And we're pretty much 98% done with that project that needs to be submitted by tomorrow, right before this meeting. I'm not sweating. I'm not stressing it because I had a feeling a few weeks ago that I'm like, I think this is going to be due sooner. I'm just going to knock it out now because it is massive. It took me about 3 weeks to do last year and it took us a good week this year, but we're ready. We're prepared. I'm not scrambling right now. We are not reacting. We are putting in place what we have. So stick to the plan. Winging it never works and details matter. Like Marco had said about the numbers for us, we have, when things go wrong in aviation, we put out hazard reports of something that happened. And we let the whole community know within that type model series aircraft to let everybody know that, hey, this is what happened to us. We've never seen it before. You need to be aware of it. And something might change in the pubs. Finance, your team, you need to make sure that they're not afraid and that they're willing and understanding that, yes, you're going to fail. But like Marco said, fail fast, fail quickly. Everybody learn from it and then move on. So it's not too costly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very, very, very good example. Actually, planning for uncertainty obviously helps. Marco, anything to add?
Yeah, I just actually, so we are in the middle of the budget planning process, right? And I had a team member come to me and, shared something very insightful. The budget process can sometimes be excruciating in terms of level of details and the reruns that you take, right? And it's a problem when you start with it, when you need it, right? So that foresight to look at the different variables, external factors, right? So you start thinking about that before you go into the financial planning, right? And what that does, if something happens, right? If something does not go to plan, the awareness of the different permutations that can happen, the awareness of, okay, well, that is the variable, right? Now sales is going down or a plant has a production issue and goes offline, but we know already what the impact is and what potential mitigations can be taken, right? A plan is only a specific set of parameters dumped into your model, right? So the flexibility comes with really understanding your model, understanding the set screws. And then when something goes off track, you know exactly, or you know at least well enough to mitigate what you need to do, although you haven't planned for that specific scenario. It's like an equation with many different variables. And the budget plan, again, is just one set, right? You can do scenario planning, you can do volatility analysis, all of this stuff. But in the end, it all comes down to, what are your set screws? And you need to start really understanding them before you go into the financial planning yourself. Because if you do, you know exactly how to react to a certain scenario, how to mitigate, right? And I would say that this, this process of planning and discussing it, uncovering what these set screws are, although that scenario that you are maybe envisioning might never occur, creates an understanding of the whole mechanics of the vehicle, the machinery that you are dealing with. That if something does happen, well, that sounds like a tire popped. So we got a spare tire in the trunk. This is what we need to do, right? Or we need to call AAA, and because we don't have a spare tire in the trunk. So, but this allows you to very quickly then decide on an action plan without scrambling. Then, what kind of car are we driving? It's like, no, we're on a motorcycle. We don't have a spare tire, right? So these kinds of insights into the machinery is very important to gain before you go into the financial planning yourself, I feel, anyways.
Yeah, I think planning for the unexpected is always something that we all use, and being detail oriented definitely helps. Gabriel, anything you want to add from your
very briefly, because on large enterprise we do forecasting a lot. So I think what Marcos said and Brian also mentioned about having a plan is super important. The group always wants to understand what's happening with the different markets, and I still remember that before COVID, we used to have we were obsessed about being accurate and 100% accurate. And any small deviation was really something that you had to explain. And we then started to operate with like we call like a soft risks and opportunity type of schedule. So we started working with ranges, because during COVID it was impossible to predict exactly what was happening. And I have the feeling that since 2019, things now evolve way faster, and uncertainty is always there. So I think instead of aiming for perfection on everything, but also aiming for do the best that we can and sharing the risks of simplifying some of our procedures is key to remain flexible. I couldn't agree more that we need good plans for the critical things that we do. Nobody wants accounting to not have a plan, right? We need to get the accounting right. But when it comes for forecasting, for example, it's just, as Marco said, the outcome of certain assumptions that we put in a paper. So sharing where we are simplifying and sharing where we see risk, I think is very important. So when surprise happens, because they will happen, the organization knows how to handle those.
Yeah, very, very good answers. I think we can all take something from that. I know one of the things that helps me with uncertainty is having strong teams around me to rely on. So, Marco, I'm going to kind of push this one to you first. And it's kind of around building our teams and making sure we can stay involved. But how can you ensure experienced, hands-on team members are involved in developing new processes? And what do you feel like successful collaboration looks like with that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'm going to make true on a comment. So when I wanted, I'm going to share one of the things where it went horribly wrong, right? To just illustrate when I didn't do that, what that looks like. So I was, as part of my professional career, I was delegated to Germany. So I'm originally a German citizen, and I was delegated back when we went IPO with the company. And one of the strategic projects I was assigned to was to create a what we call the global action tracker. So it's a tracking system of all productivity measures, okay? Because I was working for strategic procurement, and they, of course, are interested in productivity. And what I did wrong was I inherited a team and a project setup that assigned very skilled team members to certain projects. And so when I look at the question, how do you make sure that experienced, hands-on team members are involved in developing new processes? The first step is really to identify, well, who are those people? Who are my subject matter experts? They're all capable, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be with you, but they're capable not in everything. They're capable in some and not capable in others. And I took that list of people assigned to the project and only later realized that the most critical subject matter expert wasn't on that particular team, because we had a predecessor system. Yeah, we had a previous legacy system, and there is a lot of lessons learned already embedded in that system that the person or the team that was assigned to it, they were very tech savvy to bring it to the next technology level, but they were going through the same pain points, solving problems that had already been solved many, many times. So what I did wrong in that regard was, before jumping headlong into, how do we make sure how do we develop new processes, and, projects and tools always have a timeline, because there's maybe an external consultant that costs a lot of money. So you want to, speed. But what I did wrong, and what I learned, what is a real critical aspect of getting this right, is to understand, and it can be done with a very simple RACI chart, just finding out, well, who currently has what kind of knowledge, and who are my experienced hands-on people that I want to involve for this particular project, right? Because it sounds so easy, but you need to really make sure that you have those on board, because it's not that they're sabotaging the project, but we had this dynamic of like, well, I guess you don't need me, so I'm not part of the project. So my legacy experience must not be of value to you, that you didn't feel it was necessary for you to involve me in this process. So there's also different maturity stages, or where you feel maybe slated. But I could have very simply avoided that by just going and understanding before jumping headlong into the project, taking inventory of the skill and expertise set, and then realizing it would have been very, very clear, very evident, and we did so later, but we lost a half a year, to say, why isn't Brian on this project? It looks like he is our guy for everything productivity, right? He's eating that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I don't see him on there, right? And then you can very easily develop a mentorship program where you have this tech savvy person collaborating, right, with the legacy knowledge carrier, and then this is where the magic happens, right? But this would be the lesson learned, I would say. First know who those people are, because if you don't know, you can't involve them, right? As simple as that. I think that's the main takeaway I want to share. And it did cost us $500,000, by the way, right? That half-year delay. So it's not insignificant, and it's something that I could have, if I would have slowed down a little bit, easily avoided. So that's definitely a lesson learned, that I'm not going to make that mistake again. But that was painfully learned.
Yeah, very good. Brian, Gabriel, anything to add to that? We've kind of got some participant questions too that we can move on to, but any tricks or trades to keep your team members involved and collaborating and working together?
Yeah, maybe there is one easy, let's say, low-hanging fruit, which is having shared goals. Sometimes functions are setting goals apart from each other, and there's a lot of opportunity for us as finance leaders to bring the teams together to have a common goal. And when we foster that collaboration, the new processes and the more hands-on team members will automatically step up, and the others will learn from them. So for me, it's a win two elements. One in the culture aspect of things. So the more hands-on team members will show up and be the example. And the second, the results will be better because you have more people working towards the same goal.
I think also to caveat, it's a great point, Gabrielle, and Marco, I wrote down know your team. That's the most important part, but everybody doesn't know that coming in. And I think there's also there's different stages of who you work for and what you do. I've been in 3 very different environments over the last 10 years. The Marine Corps is very rigid. This is the way we do business. Here's the team you've got. Go work with them. Marine Corps Aviation, absolutely type A. Everybody is on their game. Everybody is in the top 5% in the U.S. in terms of brain knowledge, being able to apply hand, stick, rudder. Super smart, super high speed, super arrogant, super confident people. Moving to industry and working for the startup world, it was a big wake-up call for me, a little bit different because all of myself and my peers, we had years of training, tons of training, education, and we were prepared. A lot of people don't get that when they get out of college, but getting back to Gabriel's point, I think the real performers, the real achievers, they're going to elevate no matter where you put them. It doesn't matter whether they're in finance or whether they're brand new and they don't know your processes and they're setting up for a party. That party will be the best party you ever experienced. They will elevate to the top, and those that don't drop off. And it takes time for you to really be able to learn and understand your team. I'm kind of back in government right now, so change is very resistant. People are not really adept to change. Where in the startup world, we had to change and we had to be nimble and we had to be open and we had to learn all those new processes, whether it's a CRM or some new financial accounting system. You didn't have a choice because you needed to make money and repay your angel investor and your series funding, whatever that may be. So very different worlds. So my struggle here is trying to have people accept more risk, if you will, and kind of step out onto that diving board and take a risk and say, hey, this is going to be okay. We're going to be good. We're going to try this new thing out because it's going to be better. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think as a leader and also as someone that works for a company, you need to be open to change. I love the phrase that Billy Beane uses in Moneyball. He's like, evolve or die. And if you don't, you're really not going to make it. And in my opinion, that serves whether it's industry or government. You've got to be able to change and adapt and overcome. So.
Thank you. And Brian, I think that's kind of a good segue into my next question. And I think it's a question I'm actually going to use a participant question, but it definitely goes off trends and identifying new. Can you provide examples of how to effectively identify and integrate new trends, whether it's AI or new technologies, into existing financial systems without, I think this is the key part that's pretty big, without disrupting your current operations?
So we actually are dealing with this right now. I work in the finance world with information technology at the Naval Academy, and we purchase and procure all of it. But the financial systems that we use, they're constantly changing over, and we've just switched over to a new one, which has caused huge disruptions. Fortunately, I've got a solid team that really has been out on the front end of learning the processes, being able to get out ahead of it, and then teach all the other cost centers within the Naval Academy to deal with this. But it's difficult. It's hard to be able to do that, especially if you're in industry, especially if you have a limited team and you're switching from one system to another, which is what we just did over the last year. So that was really hard because on our end in government, unlike industry, it's very different. We're all about planning, budgeting. We work on a 3-year budget cycle. And we execute, we spend. But it's our job to be able to get as much money as we can and then go out and obligate it or spend it. So very similar to business development, whereas industry, you're going out to increase your bottom line and generate revenue, increase your margins, blah, blah, blah. But the financial systems and the reporting are just the same. And when you're switching from one to another, it's never going to be seamless. I would say private industry is probably quicker because you have the means to be able to do that. Contract out, have people come in and get you trained up. On the government side, the contracts are a lot bigger when we're switching over, but It's slow and it's cumbersome, and we've really struggled this year with implementing this system and dragging everybody on board in order to be able to spend their money and obligate their budget, if you will. So it's a challenge. Like I said, remain flexible, get smart in the system. Like I said, my first answer, be the subject matter expert, learn everything you can about it. That way you can actually use it to do your job as best you can, but get smart on it and learn quickly. That would be my answer.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And Gabriel, I'm kind of going to direct this one to you. It piggybacks off of that, but I mean, around new trends and new processes, what metrics or indicators should organizations use to measure the success of their finance transformation initiatives?
Sure, thank you for that, Ashley. There are some of the standard metrics, like usage of the specific new tool, or if it's a project that aims to reduce overheads, then maybe the number of heads that you're actually delivering as efficiency based on the project. But maybe my addition would be, as finance, it's easy to be siloed and only think about our own goals when delivering a finance transformation project. But I've seen some of those projects being too siloed. And when you needed the business to adopt the new forecasting or reporting tool, as an example, it was super hard because they were not involved in the design. So when looking for a KPI to define the success of finance transformation, I really like the business goals. So if it's revenue, incremental revenue, or gross margin improvement, I mean, you name it. If whatever transformation we finance are deploying is not in favor of the business achieving the business goals, we have to reconsider. So there are so many ways that you can build a business case to get to that, but I really like the approach of having the finance transformation serving the business for the using the important and the right business goals, instead of creating new ones that will only serve to justify the transformation itself.
Thank you for that. Thanks, guys. I think we're getting close to the question and answer portion anyway. However, it seems like the audience kind of knows what questions we were going to talk about anyway. So, Marco, I'm going to push this one to you around teams. It's an audience question, but I think it's kind of right on topic. What role does cross-functional collaboration play in finance transformation, and how can leaders facilitate effective communication and cooperation across multiple departments?
Awesome. I was hoping you would get me that question. For me, this is so important. I literally talk about this all the time. Why is this so important? Because it gets you out of your black box, right? It like, as a finance SCM person, for example, I ask my team, get out on the shop floor, look what's going on, what new trends are you seeing? Is there a new machine? Is there, be involved in the team meeting? So get invited, but also I invite cross-functional partners, right? And when we say cross-functions, it depends on your environment. This could be an R&D, this could be an R&D director, this could be procurement, right? If your material costs are very high, obviously you want to be very, very close with procurement, right? If your material cost in percent of your final product is very high, that's the cross-function. You want to be, sitting right on top and coordinate with them, right? In terms of lot sizes, or in terms of when you trigger certain volumes to be purchased. But this is number one to be successful, because if, as a finance function, we are, it's almost you have to be priest, right, or cleric and policeman at the same time, right? You have to be encouraging and nurturing, but you also have to make sure everybody plays by the rule set, right? It's almost like a shepherd, right? Gotta make sure everybody stays together, and then occasionally the stray sheep you need to go after and make sure they don't get picked up by a wolf or something, or they don't want or often doing their own thing. But cross-functional collaboration is, and that's not just attending, but I think you have to have a genuine interest in what they do and how that impacts the financials, right? Cross-functional collaboration does not look simply of send me a report how many heads in R&D you're planning to do, right? But would more look like, what are your teams working on? And hey, does that really make sense when I talk to marketing? Aren't we sunsetting this project? So why are we spending a lot of money on an engineering change of a product that's going obsolete, if I'm right? So you're putting those two together. So the magic happens not just in collaboration with one cross function, but as you basically throw out your net and cast in what you see out there, then putting it together, right, in your financial plan and say, this doesn't seem to make sense, right? Why would we invest in R&D when in an engineering change and then we basically sunset the product, right? And it's making those connections to those other functions that, you know, might or might not have also good cross-functional collaboration. So when you are in that hub in finance, which touches every function, I think we are uniquely predispositioned to serve as that central nervous system to bring those different points of views together and to really marry them up and have, you know, I always, and then I will turn it over, but I always compare it to what I often tell my team, not always, is I want you to think about yourself as a camera crew, but not to go and film the accident that has just happened. After it happened, you can analyze it to death post-mortem. You know, why did that person cross the crosswalk on red, and what kind of car was he hit or she hit by, and you know what ambulance came and so on, right? So you can analyze that to death, but more like a video, like the camera to film a movie and to build a storyline, to craft it before it actually happened, right? To say, we're not going to invest in that engineering change, right? Because we know that this product is going offline, and creating the story of not seeing that loss on the investment rather than analyzing at length later who didn't talk to whom, right? It's a very different approach, a very different kind of a skill set is needed, right? You could maybe have somebody do an extremely good job not being the best analyst and analyzing the post-mortem to death, but somebody who is interested enough in the business to pick that up before it happened, right? And I think this is really why cross-functional collaboration is really number one priority, close to the business, and it's part of the job. It's not like do this when you have some extra time, right? I basically tell them one day of the week, go out, be close to the business, be close to your business partner, and learn about the business as a holistic organism, not just your little section of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Marco. I think one key word that I picked up on there is why. I know that it's very important for me to kind of use that word for my team members to make sure they understand the why they're doing something. And sometimes you have to go outside of your direct box and talk to other organizations to understand why the business is doing this. In mine, that makes accounting easier if you understand why you're accounting for something a certain way. So I really appreciate that. I think we have about 5 minutes left. Brian, I think we've got one more audience question that I'm going to direct towards you. How can organizations ensure that their finance transformation efforts are aligned with the broader strategic objectives and long-term business goals of the overall organization?
So great question. And it kind of goes along with what Marco said, with actually getting out and seeing what you're buying or what you're producing as a finance person. But more importantly, what is that? What are we talking about? We're talking about communications. Communicate. The worst thing that I think an organization, or where organizations fail, where leadership fails, bosses, they don't communicate to their team. People want to know why, right? Like Ashley, you just said, Simon Sinek, the book, why? Why are we here? Why are we doing this?
I think Brian had some technical difficulties. I think he froze. Gabriel, do you want to take while he's coming back, do you want to kind of take that and throw out your objectives and your goals?
Sure. I think the first aspect is making sure that you as finance is very vocal and very active on setting those long-term goals.
Oh, there you are,
Oh,
Brian.
sorry, Brian. We lost you for a second.
Sorry. Go ahead again.
So I'll be very, very brief to ensure that you have time to close the your point. So I think there are two steps. The first is making sure that you are involved in the long-term strategy, if not leading, but co-leading with the business leader, to make sure that you know what's preventing the organization to get there. And then your finance transformation effort needs to serve the broader strategic and long-term business goals. I think it goes exactly to where Marco and Brian were sharing in their comments about communication. If you're not there, if you're not listening, and if you're not in sync with the overall broader strategy, what's the point of the finance transformation? So I think it's as simple as making sure you have a voice in the table, you have a seat at the table, and you voice over what are the elements that finance can bring to make sure that we achieve our long-term goal, and tailor the finance transformation project servicing our strategic objectives.
Thank you, Gabriel. Brian, do you want to finish kind of in the last minute or two?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. To echo what Gabriel said with communication, but one of the other things too is you don't, as a finance transformation, you don't want to have overkill. At my last company, for our CRM as a startup, we bought the Cadillac of CRMs when, after about 4 years of realizing that because we were a small startup, we didn't need all that capability, that financial system in order to meet our company's goals. So we went from, a $50,000 CRM a year to a $1,500 one a year that met our goals, met our financial goals, met our marketing goals, and we actually got more out of it, was able to create greater APIs with other softwares in order to meet, the company goals. So that's where the communications needs to be up and down the chain to understand why, what's the requirement, no kidding, what do we need to do this, and what is required, because sometimes it doesn't take a lot. So.
Thank you, Gabriel, Brian, Marco. Thank you for that. Thanks, audience, for the questions. I think it was a great discussion. I think we all took something from it. I think we're about to wrap up. So, Nick, I'm going to shoot it back over to you.
Great. And thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. As a reminder, please be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a thought leadership titled The Rise of E-Invoicing, How Technology is Streamlining Requirements Globally. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.